We're pleased to welcome now Caleb Saylors, Multimedia Journalist, SuperTalk Mississippi News.
I'm the maestro. I'm conducting this, Chiron.
All right, what the heck's going on here, Caleb, in the great state of Mississippi?
We've got a lot of things going on. I will give a breaking news update right now in the sports world. Ole Miss wide receiver, I will say former Ole Miss wide receiver, Aiden Williams. He entered the transfer portal recently. He is not going very far, just going a few miles to the east, going to Mississippi State. And he will be part of Jeff Lebby's offense this season. Williams, he was at Ole Miss for 2 seasons, had just under 120 yards receiving, didn't have any touchdowns, and kind of one of those pieces that was every year. His first year is like, all right, well, his sophomore year, we're gonna see a jump, but he was behind a very talented group of wide receivers at Ole Miss, and it looks like Ole Miss has added more talent through the transfer portal and has guys coming back next year, and so kind of unclear how much of the field he would see this coming season. So he's found a new home in Starkville, and he will definitely be utilized in Jeff Lebby's offense. And I know the guys on Sports Talk will have more to break that down this afternoon.
Interesting. So it's just stirring the old pot, this NIL stuff, isn't it?
Getting the Egg Bowl rivalry, getting Egg Bowl talks heated up. And look, the Egg Bowl just happened. We just finished the Egg Bowl just a little over a month ago, but you know, it's not a bad thing to get the rivalry stirred up, get the conversation stirred up. Of course, Mississippi State fans are celebrating this as a huge win, as like saying they dunked on Ole Miss on this, and Ole Miss people are kind of blowing it off, saying, not that big of a deal. We'll be okay regardless. We'll see. We'll see how Williams does on the field this year.
Interesting.
And so, Gerard, transitioning here, we've had some pretty rough weather in the state of Mississippi. Last night, going into today, and going into this weekend, and North Mississippi was hit pretty hard. I've got some buddies in DeSoto County and northern areas of Mississippi that have had some snow and sent pictures of it. And the MDOT is saying right now, if you're in that region of the state, be careful. I mean, if you don't have to be on the road, you don't have a medical emergency, you don't have a job to be at, don't get on the roads. Stay home. Avoid, because the roads can ice over. We might face black ice at this point if the roads freeze over again tonight, and just avoid any kind of danger there. Here in central and southern Mississippi, not as bad. We've got some rain. Of course, obviously proceed with caution there, but I would recommend for people to go check out MDOT and MEMA on social media to stay updated. And of course, we'll keep you updated too. SuperTalk.fm, in our social media, we'll keep you updated on everything going on in Mississippi too. A side note there, though, Gerard, we do have 2 basketball games taking place tomorrow night, and I'm not going to break the games down. The guys on Sports Talk could do that, but one in Oxford and one in Starkville. They both have pretty bad weather. Oxford worse than Starkville right now. Be careful. If you're planning on going to the ball game, be careful. That's my word of advice right there. And speaking of the weather, right now our lawmakers are not in session today because of the weather. We had our legislative session kicked off earlier this week, and the lawmakers gavelled in. They haven't done a whole lot this week. I'm sure next week will be much busier than this week was, but they kind of coerced effort saying, probably not a good time to be at the Capitol today because we do have a lot of lawmakers from North Mississippi and areas that have been impacted. So hopefully they've all made it home safely and can come back next week.
Send them all home.
Get things started. Right.
Means they can't make no laws.
Well, they're going to try to starting next week. And Gerard, by our first deadline, we're looking at possibly 4,000, maybe more bills that get introduced this year.
Okay.
But some of the hotter topics, of course, some of these bills may be about pecan theft or blueberries, something that are more menial, but we can probably expect to see a tax bill as early as next week.
No doubt.
House Speaker Jason White and people on the tax committees, Trey Lamar, who's on the Ways and Means Committee, are pretty dedicated to cutting taxes this year, and I think the House will pass a bill much quicker than the Senate. I think they'll send one to the Senate and they'll kind of negotiate there. But I know we've got a lot of, I'm not going to say infighting per se, but we have some differences in opinion on both sides on whether we should cut the income tax, whether we should cut the grocery tax, how we should go about that, whether we should increase sales taxes to cut income taxes. And I know you're going to break all that down. You're our finance guru here, but we will see a lot of action as early as next week, and I think we'll see some healthcare related bills. I think Medicaid expansion talks, while they may have those conversations, I think we'll kind of pivot away from that this year as lawmakers. I think Representative Sam Creekmore said it on your show that they're kind of in wait-and-see mode on what the incoming Trump administration is going to do on Medicaid policy. And why would Mississippi go ahead and rush a Medicaid bill together when they don't know what policy from CMS is going to be in the upcoming months? And we may not know that at all this session. It may be after our session is
I don't think we will.
With.
I don't think it'll be addressed.
But one thing that they will address, and I know Representative Creekmore is ready to introduce a bill, is reforming our certificate of need laws. And I know you've talked about that extensively. And for our listening audience, those who don't understand that, that's basically hospitals, medical entities, healthcare providers having to go to the government for certain services, right? Like if a hospital wants to build a new parking garage, it has to get a certificate of need, has to go through the certificate of need process, submit an application, and the government tells them whether or not they need that, how they can go about that. It's a very convoluted process, and lawmakers have argued that it's expensive and pretty unnecessary in some regards. And so they're looking to lift that for outpatient dialysis centers, allowing hospitals to do certain things like repave their parking lots without government intervention. I know they're not going to try to get rid of con laws altogether, but they will try to tweak them. But I will say, Gerard, worth noting, since we've had con laws in Mississippi since, 1974, I believe?
Yeah. Go back to the 60s and 70s.
Well, 74 was when it was mandated at the federal level. That was repealed in 87 by the Reagan administration. But states got the opportunity to whether they wanted to opt in or out of it. Mississippi has kept its con laws intact.
35, I think, still have them.
35, 15 got away with it. But of those 35, a majority have scaled them back.
They have.
To an extent. Mississippi has not done a lot, except, honestly, we've just raised the capital expenditure, how much hospitals or medical entities can spend on certain goods. But they're looking to address that this year, try to find a way to ease the burden on hospitals, like, for example, the dialysis centers that would give, hospitals like Greenwood LaFleur in the Delta or the Starkville-Oktibbeha County Hospital an opportunity to collect a new revenue stream, and it's not going to hurt any other dialysis providers. And so they're going to look at that. I know the House is gung-ho on that. Governor Tate Reeves, that's a big part of his agenda. He thinks that's part of solving our health care concerns in Mississippi is revising our con laws. And I don't know how that will go on the Senate side. I know last year a con bill went to the Senate and didn't get out of committee. But I know that Representative Creekmore and Senator Hobb Bryan, who's the Public Health Committee in the Senate, have had conversations going into this. So we might see some con reform, whereas in years past we haven't.
Mm-hmm.
So that's kind of where we are in the session, though. We expect a tax bill as early as next week. Expect some healthcare reform. And then education, they're going to try to inch towards school choice. I know Jason White, the House Speaker, is a proponent of school choice for the most part, and they're going to try to find ways to allow kids to transfer from public school to public school with minimal interference. Right now in Mississippi, you have to have consent from both schools. So like here in central Mississippi, for example, I went to Ridgeland High School. If I wanted to transfer from Ridgeland High School to Madison Central, I'd have to have consent from both schools. Well, lawmakers are going to look to loosen that this year. Try to find a way. Maybe the school you're exiting from doesn't have to give its consent, but the receiving school still has to give its consent. We'll see how the Senate approaches that, though. I know that will likely pass in the House, but we'll see how the Senate, which has been kind of the holdup on some of these bills, will react.
Yeah. Well, it's going to be quite active at a minimum. I'm really shocked at the number of bills you're hearing might be coming down the pike. So
a lot.
Oh, my gosh.
We had a lot last year. Last year was a busy session. Of course, we had two special sessions within the session last year for Amazon Web Services, which leads me to economic development in Mississippi has not stopped. If you blink, there's a new economic development project in Mississippi, the latest one being Compass Data Centers. And it's a $10 billion economic development project matching the one that AWS announced last year in Madison County, but this one will be headquartered in Meridian.
Right.
And it'll be the first campus from this company, this Dallas-based company, in our region, which is really, really cool to have that. East Mississippi, that's a good pipeline. You connect to Louisiana and Alabama really quickly, and this will create thousands of jobs, good for economic momentum in Mississippi. But one thing, though, that is worth noting is this facility is going to be constructed over an 8-year period. So don't expect this overnight. This is a work in progress. But $10 billion economic development project matching the one we had last year. That's pretty good momentum for Mississippi.
Yeah, that's absolutely massive. It's just a great thing for the state of Mississippi, and I think it is positioning us well perhaps as a technology hub.
Absolutely.
As we continue to attract these kinds of investments. All right, Caleb, we appreciate you coming on, man.
Thanks, Gerard.
Caleb Saylors, multimedia journalist, SuperTalk Mississippi News, has been our guest. We're stepping aside for a break. Right back with you. Caleb Saylors is going to hang around and tell us about a very interesting situation in Holly Springs, Mississippi.
Yeah, you couldn't quite get rid of me, Gerard. I'm back. Y'all, just for the record, I stayed here and I said, Gerard, I am not leaving. No, I'm kidding. It was amicable. But the situation in Holly Springs is pretty rough, and that's why I stayed on for an extra segment to talk about this, because this needs to be talked about. We had Public Service Commissioner Chris Brown on this morning with Dave Hughes in the early morning, so some people who may have listened to that interview are privy to what's going on. But these people in Holly Springs Utility District, which encompasses more than just the city of Holly Springs. This is 80% of the customers don't live in the city district. This encompasses a large chunk of North Mississippi, parts of Tennessee, and these people have been experiencing days-long power outages, random power outages, loss of power, just on a whimsical notice, even when the weather is perfectly fine, for years now. This is a multi-year concern, and public meetings have been scheduled. The Public Service Commission has tried to get to the bottom of this, and residents have long cried, like, hey, we're paying for our services, but my power's going out. Like one man complained that he was without power for around 90 hours for no reason. No rain, no tornadoes, no severe weather, no wind, nothing. But their substations are improperly managed, got vegetation growing on power lines. And one thing I found, the TVA, Tennessee Valley Authority, was investigating the Holly Springs Utility Department's financials. Now, by the way, this department is managed by the city of Holly Springs. So the people that live outside of the Holly Springs city limits don't have any representation. They don't have any say in how their utilities are managed. Just keep that in mind. Well, the TVA went and investigated the financials and found that they were paying more for wholesale power. The Holly Springs Utility Department was paying more for wholesale power from TVA than they were collecting in bills. So they're operating at a loss. That pretty much keeps them from doing routine maintenance, from fixing power lines, and making updates to their substations, and it's a big problem. And Commissioner Chris Brown, who was once in the legislature, who was over the Utilities Committee, has been spearheading this investigation. The Public Service Commission called on an outside firm to come investigate, Silver Point Consulting, which is a private firm, and not really looking to serve the interests of the commission, but looking to get answers as to operational failures within the Holly Springs Utility Department. But from what I was told, they've been railroaded every step of the way, not given access to city employees, even when records were subpoenaed. Those the quash motions were put together by Holly Springs officials, and they just were able to skirt just about everything. And so things kind of hit ahead this week. In November, the Public Service Commission scheduled a show cause hearing just to talk to Holly Springs officials, get with them, and figure out how we can move forward, right? Well, the hearing was supposed to take place Tuesday, which is day one of the session. And State Senator Bradford Blackman is the head attorney representing Holly Springs Utility Department. And so he went to the state Supreme Court, had a petition saying, hey, we can't show up to the show cause hearing because I have to be in session. I'm constitutionally obligated to gavel in with my counterparts, with my colleagues in the Senate. Well, the state Supreme Court denied that petition, but without prejudice, leaving the door open for the legal counsel for Holly Springs to go to another venue, and that they did. So they traveled on Tuesday morning. This show cause hearing was scheduled to be had at the Woolfolk Building, downtown Jackson, at 10 o'clock in the morning. Gerard, for giving geographical lesson to some people who may not know Jackson very well, the Woolfolk Building is right next to the state capitol.
Right.
Not interjecting my opinion, just telling y'all factually, right next to the state capitol. So I'll let you draw your own conclusions there. Well,
across the street, directly west of it.
Literally,
to be exact.
right next. It's 15 steps maybe?
Yeah.
So instead of going to the show cause hearing, these officials went to the Hinds County Circuit Court, which again is right by the Woolfolk Building, right by the state capitol, not far at all, just a couple blocks away. We got a temporary restraining order preventing the commission from having that show cause hearing. And so now Commissioner Brown, I talked to him on the phone. He told me that they're going to find a date after the session to hold this show cause hearing, and he didn't give me any more details, but they're going to find a way to hammer this down and get to the bottom of what's going on, why residents are losing their power, what the city has done, the mismanagement. And Gerard, this is eerily reminiscent to 2022 when things hit ahead in Jackson in the water system. The city was a little more transparent here in Jackson than they've been in Holly Springs, which Holly Springs hasn't given us anything. Apparently, they've turned over some documents to the Public Service Commission recently, but within a matter of days, Gerard, not like months or weeks or years ago when this was started to be investigated. Like, they're just now starting to acquiesce to some of these, not requests, but demands. And politics have been played over this. There have been accusations of malfeasance by the commission, and I won't get into the weeds of that, but saying that there's nefarious motives behind it. But all three commissioners jointly stated in Tuesday's meeting that their goal is to help the people of Holly Springs, the people in the Holly Springs Utility District that are ratepayers not getting adequate services. And that's what they're trying to do.
Well, that's what the PSC is for.
Right.
That's what they're supposed to be doing.
And I'll give Commissioner DeKeither Stamps, our Central District Commissioner, he and Holly Springs' mayor have worked with each other in the past, Sharon Gibson, the Holly Springs mayor, and he made it his mission to say, hey, you can't make these accusations about us when we're just trying to help you.
Yeah.
We're trying to help you. We're trying to help the people in this district get adequate services. That's all we're trying to do. We're not trying to play politics. We're not trying to play gotcha. We're just trying to help people.
Gotcha.
And so we'll see how this goes moving forward, but we'll look to see a show cause hearing date scheduled after the legislative session, but not far afterward, and for the ball to get rolling there. So, Gerard, real quick, what can happen here is if the Public Service Commission legislation was passed last year expanding their authority, what they can do is hold these hearings, and if they determine that the Holly Springs Utility Department is derelict in its duties, they can take this to court, and a judge can take them out. They won't have any jurisdiction over the utility department, and it'll go under receivership, kind of like Jackson now.
Well, they're a regulated utility. They have a monopoly. That's why they're regulated, and so that's the way the system's supposed to work.
Right.
Yeah.
And candidly, Gerard, I know this is not my show to give my opinion, but I would be shocked if Holly Springs Utility Department's not under a receivership when this is all said and done.
Gotcha. All right. Appreciate that
Thanks,
update.
Gerard.
We'll see what happens on that deal, man. Thanks a lot, Caleb Sailors. All right, folks.